All right, so today is quiche day, and before I kind of in the frame, I'm just going to kind of show you a couple different things that we're going to be working on today. We're going to do quiche 3 different ways, and so we're just going to shift here. Excuse some of the mess in my kitchen. I did a Lab for Foods one as well, so I've got a little bit of everything everywhere. So what you're going to see is we have, I have a pre-made pie crust that we're going to use. We're going to do a turkey, spinach, and cheese quiche. Then we're going to do individual no crust, or crustless is usually the term, individual bite quiches. We're going to do those with a little bit of sausage, cheese, and pepper. Then lastly, we're going to do kind of like a play on a pizza. It's a little bit more kid-friendly, and we're going to make a homemade crust for that. So we're going to do quiche 3 different ways and kind of show you the variations of the different types of quiche that we can do. Also, we want to look at when we're thinking about quiche is that it's going to be a combination of our main ingredients are going to be a combination of eggs and then as well as our dairy products. All right, using our milk as a cream to kind of work with the eggs and bind everything together. All right, so I'm not going to crazy worry about editing this video. I'm going to tell you guys that right now because it is late. So just work with me and hopefully I get everything in and it works well. All right, so first we're gonna make the homemade pie crust for the third quiche that we're gonna do. All right, really quick and really easy quiche crust. There's not a lot of ingredients in this at all. You're gonna use 1 cup of flour. So as you're copying down your recipe notes, you're gonna use 1 cup of flour. I'm gonna actually do my heaping measurement right over the mixing bowl that I'm gonna use. That way if anything falls in, if I have like a little bit of extra, not the end of the world. But we wanna do our measurements here. Oops, sorry. My bin is getting low. All right, and then now with our extra, we'll scrape our extra back into, let me give that a tap, level it off, and then scrape our extra back into the bin. Okay, so we've got 1 cup of flour. All right, next, simply, we're gonna add 1 stick of butter. Now, if you guys remember from a couple weeks ago, we used that stick method to measure how many ounces are in 1 stick. All right, these are actually, as soon as I open this, when we put the butter into the pie crust recipe or the quiche crust recipe, we want the butter to be cold, but we also want to make sure that it is that it's broken into small pieces and it'll mix a lot easier. So this, when we were doing our demonstration on how to measure using the stick method, these were all the pieces that were left over, and I was able to keep those. All right, so I've got 1 cup of butter and 1 stick of, 1 cup of flour and 1 stick of butter, all right, which is equal to 4 ounces. All right, remember that 1 whole block is equal to a pound. So we have, again, 1 cup of flour, 1 stick or 4 ounces of butter. All right, next we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of cold water, and then that is all that we're gonna add into this measurement. I am gonna throw this onto my KitchenAid mixer, and if you have a mixer and you have a dough hook, this is the best thing to create this type of dough, pie crust, the dough. If you don't, you can use a hand mixer, no issues, and if you don't have either, then you can mix by hand. If you are mixing by hand, you might want to soften the butter in your hand a little bit before you start to mix the flour in, okay? So again, I'm gonna add in 2 tablespoons of cold water. I got a little bit of a mess over here. So, and that is our, simple recipe. A lot of recipes call for salt in the, it's not catching. There we go. A lot of recipes will call for salt in your crust as well. You can throw a pinch of salt in. Usually, I've got a little salt here, so I'll just kind of throw a pinch in. It's usually going to be like 1/8 of a teaspoon, which essentially is just a pinch. Okay? All right, so I'm going to turn my mixer on over here, and I'm going to turn this on to a low setting and just give it a little bit of time to work. All right, and I'm just going to leave that. Okay? Now the next thing, and we're just giving it a couple minutes, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to talk about the actual quiche recipes. So when we are preparing quiche, there's going to be, we're going to use like a 9-inch pan or a pie pan if we're not using the individual crust. Okay, so this pie pan, or these pie pans, I should say, there's 2 in here, or pie crust, I just bought at Kroger. Right, this one in particular is a deep dish, and so it's a little bit easier to work with. It's just my preference. Here we go. So I pull these out. These are already done for you. You can buy these in the frozen section pretty cheap. I think these were $1.50 the other day. So if you have access to do that, it's kind of nice because you're like, all right, cool. Like I said, they're in the frozen section, and then when you pull them out of the frozen section, just let them, if you really just let them sit out, you don't need to let them thaw or anything in a refrigerator. Just let them sit out for just a little bit. These have been out for kind of an hour, and they're decently soft, so that's good. So now the filling for the quiche. When we make a quiche, it's kind of like, basically, you want to call it almost like an egg pie. All right, we're going to preheat our oven while we get ready to build the inside of our pies, and we're going to preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So we can preheat that. I'm catching as much as I'd like it to. And sometimes you gotta give a little bit of more work there. All right. Okay, so the quiche itself, the insides are going to be made up of a really simple recipe. All right, here you go. And make sure that you're copying this down. We are going to have 6 eggs, and you can see that over here when I already showed you, I actually have 4 settings of different eggs, because we're going to change the filling of each of our different pies. Because I have 2 of the store-bought pie crust, I'm going to make 2 of the same. But I'm going to have I'm going to have 6 eggs in each of them. All right, then what I'm going to do is when we get ready to make the filling, each filling is also going to get 3/4 of a cup of milk. You can also use heavy cream. It's really just, it's preference. If you are a little bit more conscious about fat, then you might not want to use a super heavy cream. You might just want to use a 1% or 2% milk, but the heavier percentage of fat in the dairy you use in the milk, the thicker and creamier it's going to be. So it's just preference. All right, we're going to turn this off for a few, and we'll leave that. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create our fillings. Essentially, when we're making a 9-inch quiche, and we're using, again, the 6 eggs, 3/4 of a cup of milk, we're going to use approximately, we're going to use 1 to 1.5 cups of filling. And then if you are adding cheese in, you are going to use about 1/2 cup of cheese into your mixture. All right, so you're going to see me do that 3 different ways, and we're just going to kind of go at it. All right, so the first I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of get, I'm actually going to use my volume measuring cup for this, just because it is, because it's a little bit wider. And it's a little bit easier to not make a mess. So the beauty of the quiche is, it's like the perfect leftovers. All right, you can literally take anything and make it into like whatever you want to cook. All right, so I'm just gonna literally I took this big piece of turkey, and I'm going to cut this up. Turkey and spinach, I'm just gonna kind of roll it almost like we're doing a chef nuts cut. Turkey and spinach is one of my favorite combinations. So I just want to take this, and I'm just going to, again, I'm just gonna kind of chunk it up. All right, I don't wanna like mince it. It's turkey, so we don't wanna mince it. And then I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna say like, okay, about how much stuff do I have in here? And again, by that, I'm gonna mean my filling. So it's gonna be a combination of whether or not you have meat, if you have vegetables, and you might have a lot of meat and not that many vegetables, you might have a lot of veggies, and fill. So this is gonna be, I'm right at about, I'm just under a cup here, okay? So next, I'm actually gonna take spinach, and I've got fresh spinach here. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, since I'm at home, I'm gonna use the same cutting board and the same knife for just about everything that I'm doing here. All right, and I'm going to use this space. All right, and I'm just gonna kind of pinch the end of my stems. I had a food waste bin somewhere. All right, and I'm gonna pinch the end of my stems. Now with the spinach, we're gonna cook the spinach really quickly. We're just gonna saute it really lightly. It doesn't take long at all to cook spinach, and you'll see that on the stovetop in just a second. All right, so again, I'm just pinching when I've got the spinach. I'm just getting rid of the stems, and then I'm gonna roll it and do that chiffonade cut. And just cut it up a little bit. I'm not gonna cut it up too much because we are gonna saute it in just a second. If you're making fresh spinach and you want it cut up, then you would cut it pretty small and you would roll it in that chiffonade cut more. But because we're gonna saute it, really, I'm just gonna kind of stack it so it has some depth, and I'm literally just gonna kind of cut it in thirds. All right, because it's already, you know, once we saute it, it's gonna shrink up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take just a regular saute pan. I'm gonna add just about a teaspoon of oil. And go ahead and get that oil cooking. I'm gonna go like a medium high. You can put it on high if you wanna get the pan hot a little faster, but when you go to actually saute your spinach, you wanna lower it to like a medium high, okay? So then once I do that, I'm also going to use a little bit of, I'm gonna use green onion, like a scallion, instead of using white onion. All right, and I'm just gonna do a real quick little chop here. And that essentially is gonna be like all the prep that I have to do. The cheese that I'm gonna use a box grater. I'm gonna go ahead and saute the scallions right with the spinach. Right. We'll wait for that to get hot. All right, the cheese that I'm gonna use, I'm gonna use a box grater, like I was saying. So I'm just gonna use one of my sides over here. I'm probably gonna use the, yeah, my small fine. Sit there. All right, so while I'm grating my cheese and getting that mixture, I'm gonna toss this spinach right into the pan. All right, as you look at the spinach and you see the spinach, you'll realize that it's going to saute quickly. I'm gonna throw the scallions in there as well. And I'm just gonna use a mixing spoon to kind of move it around a little bit as it starts to cook. All right, so once I get done with that, or while that's working, I'm going to grate about a half a cup of cheese. All right, and you can use, again, any flavor palette. So this one is gonna be the combination. This is turkey, spinach, green onion, and cheese. So I am gonna actually toss all of this all in one measuring cup. All right, so we want to have, remember that we said, and I'm gonna use the end of this cheese. Remember that we said we want to have about a cup and a half of filling. All right, because this is gonna melt, I'm gonna take some of these chunky pieces of cheese and we're gonna use it right in here. All right, so we want 1.5 cups of filling of our meat, of our veggies, and then we want about 1/2 cup of cheese if we're adding cheese. So essentially what I want to get to here, about 2 cups if you're a little bit over, at the end of the world. All right, so I'm gonna add this in here. Right now, I'm still looking like I'm just over 1 cup. All right, I'm gonna take my spinach over here. All right, now we put all that spinach in, and this is all that it's making. All right, spinach really definitely, it shrinks up, so we might do just a little bit more. All right, and that's all I'm gonna actually cook this spinach. All right, I'm gonna do 1 more batch of spinach. And then that's gonna be my main ingredients for our first quiche. So again, we'll be just at about 2 cups of 2 cups of filling. All right, these pieces I left whole because again, they will, when you saute the spinach, it will shrink up. So we will let that cook. Stem. All right, all stems over here. Okay. All right, while this spinach is working, I'm going to add this mixture. Where is my bowl over here? All right, so this mixture is almost done. We're a little bit shy of 2 cups, but remember we're going to add that spinach at the end. So I'm going to use my volume measuring cup as I move on into the next recipe. All right, so we're just going to move this one over here because that's going to be for our pie crust. Give this a quick rinse. All right, so the next quiche that we're going to work on is going to be the individual crustless quiche. All right, so that filling is going to use, I'm going to use breakfast sausage that I had already cooked before. It's going to be a combination of breakfast sausage, cheddar cheese, and then green and red pepper. Looking good over here. So I'm just going to kind of line these up. I'm going to do a quick little chop here. Again, remember with all of your knife safety as we've continued to work, you guys have been doing a nice job with turning your stuff in. Just keep those bottom knuckles all tied in. All right, if you want to have, more bite-sized pieces, then you would just cut it up a little bit more. All right, so again, if I'm looking at here, I'm just under a cup. And also remember, because we're using the volume measuring cup and we're measuring weight, that you have, a little bit more space because we're using the canister. And really, because we're doing something solid, we could be using the scale. So if you're a little over 2 cups of your combination, that's not the end of the world at all. All right, this is done, so I'm going to combine it with our other mixture over here. Come on. There's a couple little spinach bites in there. You're going to see that I'm going to use it in just that same pan in just a second. But again, because I'm at home, I'm not going to stress about that. All right, so again, I want to do green and red peppers in here. That meat is already cooked, so I'm going to go ahead. I was able to use it on this cutting board. All right, when you are putting a filling into the quiche, you do want your meat to already be cooked. So if you're going to make, if you're going to add in bacon, then you would want to, cook your bacon first. All right, you could use Canadian ham. That's a really good popular one, Canadian ham, and either American cheese or cheddar cheese. Right? And you can see, I'm just going to add in the green pepper, and then I will add in the red after. All right, now the beauty, again, of using the quiche is that all you're doing is you're combining whatever flavor palettes you want, whatever meat you want, whatever veggies you want. If you are not a big vegetable person, you know, then don't eat vegetables with it. Then you make it more kind of like, you can make a meat lover's quiche. When we annotated recipes earlier in the year, one of the recipes that we annotated was a meat lover's quiche. And it was, you know, just a bunch of different types of meat. A little bit of, I want to say American cheese if I remember, or maybe shredded cheddar, come to think of it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and use that cross chop. So as you're writing down those cooking methods or your mise en place methods, again, on my filling is gonna be about a cup and a half of filling here. All right, if I'm looking at this, I am still under 2 cups here. I'm gonna add a little bit more pepper. All right, I'm gonna use my ends here. All right, this one is one of my favorites to make, which is actually why I'm making it with the crustless individual quiches, because it's one of my go-to in the morning. And then I just kind of take one because they'll be in individual muffin cups. All right, so we should be right about 2 cups here. I don't add a ton of cheese into this one, so I want my veggies and my meat to get basically to 2 cups on its own, which it almost is. And then I'm gonna top it with a mild cheddar and add that into the mixture. Okay, so now we're gonna put this over here, and that's gonna go with our crustless, and we will use that again in a little bit. All right, so then lastly is, lastly is our, it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like a play on like a pizza. This is actually a quiche that I was able to make for my nieces and trick them into eating it. So I'm gonna take this mixture. I'll use that in a few minutes. Again, I want to use my volume measuring cup because we're just going to add in 2 cups of whatever our filling is. So I'm actually using little pepperonis, all right? And I know that sounds funny and you think like, why, you know, why would we use that? But if you think about kind of like a breakfast pizza at school, if you've ever had like a breakfast bagel, it's kind of the same idea as that. All right, I'm going to sneak in some green scallions and some green, or green onions into the mix. Not too many, because when I make it for the girls, let's be honest, they're little kids, so they're like, oh my gosh, vegetables. And I'm also not going to crazy overload this one. All right, we want to make sure that our filling isn't, we don't want to ever go over 2 cups with our filling, but we can be at 1 cup and it'll still be okay. So our filling on our recipe, as you're filling out your recipe cards right now, your filling itself, again, is going to be 6 eggs, 3/4 cup of milk, a little bit of salt and pepper to taste, and then 1.5 to 2 cups of filling, and that's a combination of meat, veggies, and cheese, depending on what it is that you are filling with, okay? So we want to be no less than 1 cup and no more than 2 cups. All right, now with this, by doing it this way for this particular quiche, all right, and making this kind of like a, hey, we're having a breakfast pizza, it's easy to trick the girls into eating eggs, and so they're really not, we put a little bit more egg in it than we do when they're at my house. I will make a little bit more egg, then I worry about the cheese and the pepperoni on this one. All right, so I'm gonna add actually 2 different kind of cheeses. I'm just under a cup here. I'm gonna add a little bit, that was like an Italian shredded cheese. I'm gonna also add a little bit of I have sliced Colby Jack in my house right now. So that is as easy as it is. As again, just kind of going like, hey, what do I have in the fridge? What can I add? And then how are you seasoning it? So because that's the end. All right, I'm just gonna kind of take this cheese and do a real quick, just a little shred on it. I'm not gonna throw it on the box grater at all, obviously, because it's already sliced. So I just want to, kind of chunk it up. All right, and then I'm just gonna take, literally, we're gonna say one for each of them. So 2 green onions or scallions. Again, pushing that food underneath the blade. Remember, keeping the point and the tip on the cutting board. Okay, so this mixture is, I am right at about a cup. So that's fine. This one is gonna be a little bit more egg-based because the idea is to get them eating more of the eggs than it is about getting the other parts of the filling. All right, so that is as simple as it is to create the filling. Now we're just gonna go through the steps and we're gonna go through the process of just kind of mixing it all together and putting it in the oven. So again, you should have preheated your oven to 375 if you are following along for the bake along. We're gonna check on the pie crust in just a second and then we will come right back. All right, so I made the last filling, all right? And I just did all red peppers and all green peppers, and then I actually went in the fridge and just got like 1 little spoonful, 1 tablespoon of salsa and added that in. And I'm actually going to saute these, all right, much like we did the spinach. Again, because I'm at home, I'm gonna cheat and use the same pan. All right, so I'm just gonna turn my pan on high. And then while that is preheating, again, we're just going to saute those particular vegetables. So it's green pepper and red pepper. A little bit of salsa in there just to give it a little bit of tang. It's like a spicy salsa that we have. So that's going to be just like a completely veggie quiche. It was kind of just like the leftover that was sitting around. So it was the leftover of teaching you guys how to do the leftovers. All right, so while that is warming up, we're gonna do that in a second. I realized a second ago, I was like, why is this crust not like starting to bind? And it's because we didn't add the 1 egg. So, or I didn't add the 1 egg, not you guys. So when we look at our recipe, again, when you're writing down your recipe, easy pie crust, we've got 1 cup of flour in here, 4 ounces of butter broken into 8 tablespoons, so 8 little small cubes, pinch of salt, and 1 egg. So that's the only thing that we did not add. All right, so now I'm gonna throw this on again and give that another couple minutes, and now it'll start to bind well. All right, so while that is happening, we're gonna saute these vegetables. Hear a nice sizzle on everything. So no, we don't need them to be super, super gushy, because remember, we're going to finish cooking everything because it's going to go into the actual, into the stove in a few minutes. So our oven beeped a second ago, a minute or 2 ago. So we are preheated, and we are preheated at 375 again. So today's demo is kind of a combination of the mise en place and the cooking. So make sure that as you're writing everything, you know, you're writing your measurements down that I've talked about and I've said several times, and that you're writing down also the steps to the, to preparing the crust, as well as preparing the filling, and then when we go to bake. There we go. All right, lower that real quick. Smush together. Much better. All right, and this is, again, almost done sauteing. So we're gonna saute any vegetables that you have. If you're going to saute them to soften them a little bit, then you want to cook them for about 2–2.5 minutes. Again, they don't need to be all the way cooked through, so we just want to saute them and soften them for about 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to leave this on for just another minute. And I'm going to start measuring out my first batch of milk. Now, when we use our volume measuring cup, again, 6 eggs to a 9-inch pan, 3/4 cup. When I use my volume measuring cup, I'm going to come down lower and make sure that I can see. All right, there we go, perfect. All right, and then I'm actually going to just pour these right into the eggs. We're going to dump it into, we'll be right there. We're going to dump it into a larger mixing bowl in just a second, but because we're making 4 at once, I just want to make sure that I'm portioned out. Okay, I'm good. All right, so again, 3/4 cup, 6 ounces. I've got my pie crust going behind me. 3/4 cup. I'm just kind of filling here, because when we make the filling, it's going to be a combination of the eggs, the mixture, and the cream. Ooh, just a smidge over on that one, but that's okay. The cream, and so we are using 2% milk for the cream. All right. Those are going to be turned off. Check that. So I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm actually going to kind of dump this right under the countertop. It's not forming still as lovely as I would like it to, but it just depends. Some days doesn't seem to want to do what it wants to do. So I'm going to basically, we're basically clumped together by using that dough hook. It's going to grab the egg, it's going to grab the little bit of water that was in there, the 2 tablespoons, or the tablespoon, excuse me, of cold water. It's going to grab that liquid and kind of bind it to the flour. So we're pretty much into a ball here. We're just going to kind of take those pieces, smush them in the pan, and then I'm going to bring it out onto the countertop, and I'm going to knead it right on the countertop. All right, so I got it basically into the form, and then I'm just going to work it into a little bit neater of a dough ball, if you will. Sometimes with the dough hook, you can walk away from your mixer and literally come back, and it's just like sitting in there like a perfect little dough ball, just like that. So other times, you've got to give it a little bit of love after, and that's okay. All right, so I'm a little bit sticky, so I think I'm going to add a little bit of flour to this. Add just a little bit of flour to the countertop, because we're going to have to use a rolling pin in a minute, just like any other pie crust. So I just kind of, when I'm kneading it, I'm going to roll it right over the flour that I dropped down on the countertop. So I don't want to add a ton of flour into like the actual mixture. I just want to roll it up, and where it absorbs more flour, it means that that is just a little too sticky of an area. All right, there we go. Okay. All right, so now, right on this floured surface, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of pat this out, and we're gonna pat it out into our pan, like a disc, if you will. I don't know why this is so sticky, but if it's sticky, honestly, you just add flour to your surface, just like when we've made pizza crust before, or pizza dough in class. All right, and then we'll start to roll it out. All right, so what we're gonna make, this is gonna be one pie crust, and we're gonna roll it out, we're gonna thin it out, and we're gonna make it large enough to go over a 9-inch pie crust. So when you use your rolling pin, all right, you can use a rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can use a can of soup. Just make sure that it's not gonna be super sticky. When you use your rolling pin, it's a really, really good idea to take flour and coat the outside of the rolling pin with flour. All right, and then go ahead and start to press out your pie crust. Now, when you go ahead and you make your circular disc here, all right, you want to make your disc is going to end up actually being bigger than, this is falling apart, it's making me crabby. We're going to kind of merge these and marry them, and hopefully when we roll it, it will smush. You guys have all been with me long enough to know that when mistakes happen, we roll with them and we figure it out. All right. Now, the beauty of doing a quiche pie crust, or really any pie crust, is that if you do have a couple empty holes, you can kind of blend them back together, and you can even pat them back together once they're in your pie pan. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second, because I've got one that I know I'm gonna have to merge right here. All right, so when you look, you want to use your pie crust here, and I'm actually gonna kind of try to spread this out a little bit this way because I'm gonna be a little bit shy. You want, ideally, for your circular disc that you're now rolling out, if I lay my pie pan here, you want about 1 inch of extra diameter because it's gonna go up the sides. All right, that's gonna be the same with any pie, not just for quiche. But for any pie, we're gonna do that. All right, we're gonna try to pull this. Hopefully, Another teacher might say to themselves, I'm gonna start the recording again. I am gonna say that I love you guys, and I hope that you enjoy this moment right now. There's a decent amount of moisture on the inside of this, so I don't know why. All right, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pop this into the refrigerator, and we're gonna let this one sit for a little bit. Sometimes when we put them in the refrigerator, the dough kind of hardens a little bit and it makes it a little easier. So we're kneaded, the dough itself is kneaded really, really well. But it just seems to be really extra kind of sticky, so it's pulling almost like a Play-Doh, and we want a little slightly more firm dough than that. The biggest thing that you want to do is just make sure that you keep kneading it and keep working with it. We said the same thing when we've done pasta dough before, and then also when we've done pizzas and things like that in class when we're working with a different dough, is it's not magic. And as much as I say that to you guys all the time, I feel like I was definitely hoping that it was magic and that it would go a little bit better. So I'm gonna really quick just wrap this in a little bit of film wrap, just real loosely. We are gonna pop this in the fridge, do the other couple quiches, and then we'll come back to that dough. So it's just gonna be in there for probably about 5 minutes. All right, I'm gonna real quick just kind of clean this up. We'll probably put a little bit of flour down in a few minutes. But in the meantime, we'll fill the others. Okay, so we're gonna take this mixture here, all right, and we are gonna now make our, this is our turkey, cheese, spinach, all right? A couple different ways that you can make your actual mixtures. All right, a lot of people like to whisk the eggs separately than, like separate in 2 different things and just pour it over the mixture. It's really just preference. All right, we're gonna take this bad boy. We still have to whisk our eggs before we either add the mixture in here or add in here. So we're gonna take the milk right with it. I like whisking the milk right with the eggs at the same time. I don't know why, I just think it like pulls more of the flavor and makes them mix a little bit more. That might just totally be like something random of me, and it might not be true at all, but that's just what I do. All right, like I said before, we're gonna add salt and pepper to the mixture. So as you're writing down on your recipe, again, 6 eggs, 3/4 cup of milk. We're gonna add 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of pepper. 1 teaspoon on a shaker. It's usually about 4 shakes, 4 or 5, depending on how big your salt and pepper is. All right, you want to just be able to see a couple little black spots of the pepper, but not a ton. Okay. All right, so with this particular mixture, I am going to add everything right into here. We are going to mix it all up in here so that way we're really getting everything evenly coated. I'm going to use a mixing spoon for that as opposed to the whisk. Still going to do kind of a stirring action, but we're using the mixing spoon as opposed to the whisk. We're not whisking anything at this point, we're just combining. So we want to make sure that we kind of separate that cheese that was in there. Ideally, you want cheese in every single bite. And this is going to be our first quiche. All right, so now I'm going to take this and we're just going to really slowly pour it in. All right, I usually pour from one side to the other and then kind of go back from this side, coming back again. All right, and you should see that your quiche, your mixture is going to go pretty much right to the top. And that is going to be good to go. All right, I'm going to very carefully slide this over here. All right, and next we're going to do the crustless quiche. All right, and we're going to do these in the muffin tins. Now, usually when you are making a 9-inch pan, like a recipe that's good for a 9-inch pan, you're usually going to get about a dozen of the individual cupcakes. So remember when we do this part of our recipe, all right, this is a crustless recipe, so make sure you're adding that down on your notes, all right, or on your feedback sheet. All right, I'm gonna line the muffin tins with cupcake liners. I will be honest, you don't have to line them with liners, but if you're not going to, totally make sure that you spray your pans because that egg is definitely just gonna stick right to it. All right, now this is gonna be a little bit different because I'm going to tell you that I definitely suggest we're gonna make our mixture first. We've got our mixing spoon over here. All right, and what we're gonna do, because this is a crustless bake, we're just gonna take a little bit of this mixture and we're gonna put it in each cup. All right, you want it to be less than half full, no more than half, because you've gotta have room for the egg to kind of seep in around it. So if you try to do a ton more than that, it's just not gonna be, you might be like, oh, I wanna put so much meat in this one, it's gonna be delicious. No, you gotta have room for the egg to get in there, otherwise the bake is gonna be all off balance and it won't taste right. Remember, recipes are all about balance. All right, put that little guy in there. Last few here. And then what we're gonna do is we are going to mix and whisk our eggs and our milk with our seasoning. And then we're gonna actually pour the mixture over the top of each of these little cups. All right, and you can kind of take a look and go, oh, that one doesn't have a lot, or that one has too much, or that one doesn't have any, and kind of go from there. All right, so we're gonna pop that over here. 6 eggs, 3/4 cup milk. All right, 1 teaspoon, 4 or 5 shakes. And then we're gonna whisk this together. So remember, when we're whisking the eggs together, we just want it to be kind of like a golden yellow. We don't want to see any of, any egg yolk anymore. So I'm to almost look kind of like a banana pudding, if you will. The best way to kind of make sure, because the milk sometimes will hide if there's a little yolk, is just to kind of pull up on your whisk and check it. If you don't have an actual whisk, you can do this with a fork. Really, you can do it with a spoon too. You just really have to use it like a spoon to kind of like cut in and break up that yolk. It's a little bit harder, but it is not impossible. All right, I'm gonna actually try to pour this into our value measuring cup because it'll be a little bit easier to pour. So now all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add a little bit of the egg mixture to each cup. I don't need to add a ton. Even if you feel like you're not covering it, that's okay, because let your veggies kind of settle in the liquid, and then you'll see that the liquid will kind of come back out or surface a little bit better. All right, so make sure, go through and make sure that you top all 12, and then just like we always say, you can always add more once you add everything, you know, and you got, if you filled 10 of them really high. So now I've got extra here. I'm gonna go back in and kind of check out which ones have a little bit more filling on the top and a little less egg yolk or egg mixture. And just kind of top off the last couple guys. Where do I wanna go? Perfect, and, oop, that one's a little too high. Okay, perfect. So then these are gonna be our crustless quiche. We're gonna move these over here. We're gonna go into the oven all at the same time, which is why we're just kind of transferring from over there. All right, lastly, we're gonna go back over and we're gonna use the other pie pan that I had there. Again, 6 eggs, 3/4 cup of milk. Quickly whisking this. All right, with this one, I'm gonna put my veggies. I'm gonna actually show you the way to fill everything, spread it, and then pour your mixture over the top. Remember, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of pepper. Some people, if you like things spicy, this is my all veggie. So because there's not, here we go. Because there's not any like meat in here, if it's all veggies, a lot of times we'll add a little bit of paprika and just kind of make it like a spicy veggie dish. So depending on what we're doing, if we're making like a stir fry and we don't have meat, we're just like loading up on veggies, you want to give it like a good kick. That's one of the great things about playing with a recipe like this, is because it's so simple, even though, like, you know, as you're taking notes, you know, your notes yourselves are going to be longer than, you know, than it would take to make one, which is going to be one of your options. So as we go through this in class, I'm taking all of my veggies here, and I'm actually going to pile them into the crust. And then I'm going to spread them out and pour my mixture over. Now the reason that I'm doing this different is just to show you the different ways that you can prepare the actual pie itself. All right, and then I would use my spoon, or you can use your hands, whatever, and just basically spread it all out. You don't want to pat it like where it's totally firm, because again, when you have this mixture, you want it to creep in all the crevices and to fill those holes. All right. Okay, sorry. I tried to get out of the way of my sneeze there. All right, so then I'm gonna take this and I'm now gonna pour it in, and we're gonna nice and slow kind of just pour it around the bowl or pull it around the pie. You can actually see a ton of that paprika. Ooh, it's gonna be a spicy mixture there. All right, and then I have a little bit of egg yolk or egg mixture that is still in here, but I'm right at that fill line. I don't wanna go any higher, but otherwise it's gonna like overlap or overfill when we put it in the oven. All right, so we got that one out of the way. Let's check our other dough real fast. Hopefully it's a little bit easier to spread this time around. And then we'll really quickly make up that last batch. All right, so now you can look at, again, I went over this prior to you guys watching this video. So you are either, when you are submitting your work, you are either making a quiche, if you choose and if you have the supplies, all right, or you are writing out the steps of the recipe and on the feedback sheet, and then including a quiche recipe that you found online. All right, so you're gonna fill out, we're gonna kind of pat this out here, fill out your ingredients that I talked about, all right, the different crusts that we talked about in class, the measurements on the filling. There we go. Much better. All right, you can talk about the mistakes that Miss Murray made on the crust. All right, definitely was helpful to throw that bad boy in the refrigerator for a little bit. You can see right away how well this is now working. All right, so you just, again, want to make that pie crust to be a round shape, a little bit bigger, beautiful, than your actual pie pan. We're gonna come over here really easily, hopefully nice and easily, merge that in, kind of give yourself that slack, that way your pan, you can just kind of tuck in all of your sides. You want to make contact with the bottom of your pan where the creases are. Don't press it too hard. You don't want it to have a, you don't want to break the dough. Obviously you saw what happened when I broke the dough before we tried this better method. All right, but you just want to kind of push it against that corner. All right, you can use either a paring knife or you can even use a pizza cutter to go around the outside of your pan. You want to try to have a decently sharp knife. If you want to get fancy, this is when you can do different kind of pinches. Like the crust that I bought from the store had kind of like a wavy pinch on the edge of the crust. And we're just going to get rid of the excess because we don't want it to burn over the side. So here is your extra. All right. And then anything that has the extra, you just want to kind of take your a couple of your fingers, move along the outside of the pan. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And just kind of pinch any of those sides. All right, you do want it over the top. Like I said, it's just a little bit sneaking down. You want it over the top, but again, you don't want it hanging over the top. All right, so that is the homemade crust version. So we have the 3 different types of quiches that we use, the store-bought crust. We're gonna take our last mixture here, again, 6 eggs, 3/4 milk, 3/4 cup of milk, excuse me. Whisk this up, and then we're gonna add this is our kind of our kids pizza quiche. Pepperoni, Italian mix of shredded cheese, and then I put a little Colby Jack and just a couple of the scallion onions. All right, so this one, let's go ahead and we're gonna kind of mix this all together in here. And then remember that we didn't add a ton of mixture because when I've made these for my nieces, I want them to eat more of the egg. It's kind of tricking them into eating eggs because they don't like eggs ton. So it's kind of a trick. So we have more egg than we do of the mixture. So we're gonna toss that right in here. A spoon over here. Again, just kind of mix it really gently. And then slowly pour it into your pie pan. All right, so then our cooking time on here, remember that our cooking temperature, your oven should be preheated to 375 degrees. Ours has been preheated for a while. So we're gonna take all of these quiche, including the crustless, and we are going to go ahead and put them into the oven. All right, when you have the crustless, that's gonna take a little bit less time. All right, the aluminum pans, a lot of people recommend putting them on a pie pan or onto a sheet pan just because they are not as sturdy. So you want to just be careful of that. So you can put them directly onto your wire rack, or you can put them onto a sheet pan and put them into the oven on the sheet pan so they don't spill and it's more sturdy. All right, either way is fine. You just have to make sure that you're paying attention to that. We're gonna put all of these on or in the oven, 375 degrees. We're gonna bake this for 40 to 50 minutes. So we're gonna set the timer right now. I'm gonna put them in the oven. We're gonna set the timer for 40 minutes and come back. We'll look at them. If they're ready to come out, we'll pull them out of the oven. If they're not, we'll put them in for a couple more minutes and then pull them out and show you what they look like. All right, so we're doing a quick little check on these. These have been in the oven for at 375 for 40 minutes. We are gonna take a toothpick and put it into the center of the quiche and see if it comes out clean or if it comes out with any type of yolk. This is really easy to see that there is still some like your white spots here, and some of your quiche you're still kind of liquidy. So we're gonna leave these in. Again, we would use a different toothpick if we were at school for each one. Because I'm at home, I'm comfortable with that. I didn't think to tell you guys, but because I have the muffins on the top, I had the sheet pan actually on the middle tray, and then my good pie pan was on the bottom. I switched those out after about 25 minutes, or switched these two just so they kind of bake a little bit more evenly. I'm gonna go ahead and pull out the individual quiches. If you take a look at those and we pierce those, you're gonna see that those are coming out pretty clean. So we're gonna take these out because they are smaller. They are going to be already cooked, right? And we will let those start cooling. We're gonna put them over onto a cooling rack over there. We're gonna close the oven door and put the bottom two quiches in for about another, probably about another 6 minutes. And then we will take them out and let them cool for 10 minutes. All right, so final product time here. I took everything out of the oven. Again, we had those last three that were actually in the pies that went into the oven for another 10 minutes. So they were baked a little bit closer to 50 minutes. And then went ahead and pulled those out. And everything has been cooling. Obviously, the individual quiches, the crustless quiches, or sometimes people will call them egg muffins. And you can just see why that is, just because they're gonna be in your little muffin tin. So these are really easy to put in the refrigerator and keep those nice and cold. It's kind of like almost like an egg sandwich, and you can just pop them in the microwave in the morning. A lot of people that do meal planning and things like that will make these, because then you can just eat one or two of them and you know that it was a nice, fast, easy breakfast. So we've got our quiches over here. They will cool for about another 10-15 minutes, and then you can slice into them. And basically you're going to slice into them just like you would with any pie, and go ahead and serve. If you take them right out of the oven, in particular your actual pies, if you take them right out of the oven, let them cool for, again, 10 minutes, slice, and serve, they are still going to be warm on the inside. So when they're cooling, they're not necessarily cooling all the way to be like a room temperature or cold. It's just letting your crust kind of set. But when you slice into it, it'll still be very, very warm. You'll still see a little bit of steam come out, and it'll be nice and hot as it goes onto your plate. So final quiches there. And then as far as instructions for how to finish the lab, make sure that you check the assignment sheet and make sure that you paid attention in class. So you have this is gonna be the option of how you're completing the assignment. So go ahead and make sure that you look at that options page and let me know if you have any questions. All right, bye guys.